So the March of the Goblins event is still active in Diablo 4 and will be for 4 or 5 days when this video is being recorded. So if you're still out there looking for goblins, I want to go over one of the easiest and one of the more consistent ways to just constantly find goblins. And this is actually going to be in the open world. And what's nice about this goblin farm is that you are consistently finding goblins. So you're not going to have to go to Infernal Hordes and try to search for a goblin wave, potentially having to do multiple 10 wave runs of Infernal Hordes until you finally find a goblin wave. And unlike Infernal Hordes, you are actually going to be getting loot from the goblins themselves. So I think actually going and searching for goblins that drop loot, this is probably the most consistent method for this event. And you're also not going to need anything to do this farm, because another example of a really good goblin farm for the goblin event is doing treasure breach nightmare dungeons. But unless you actually have dungeon keys with the affix on it, you're just going to randomly be rolling through escalation dungeons to try to get a treasure breach key. And while those can be pretty good as well, this one doesn't require anything and you're still finding goblins pretty consistently. Now, with the March of the Goblin events, there are a lot more goblins in the open world. If you remember back to when Vessel of Hatred was released, pretty much every new March of the Goblin event would have a lot more goblins, specifically in Nahantu compared to everywhere else. But it seems that pretty much the entirety of the open world has similar-ish goblin spawns, but there are some specific areas that are just significantly better for this just because of how these areas are made. Now, the first thing I will say is don't be looking for goblins in Helltides. Now, Helltides will have more goblins like everywhere else, but Helltides have a lot of other players in them. If you don't know, any instance of Diablo 4 you're in, essentially that version of the open world, there can be 12 other players total. Not in that zone, but just essentially in that instance of the open world. Now, if you go to a Helltide, the vast majority of players will be there in that instance. That's why anytime you go to Helltide, you almost always see other people. Sometimes you'll go to the Blood Maiden and there'll be like 6+ other people there. Now, the reason you don't want to search for goblins in Helltides is for that reason specifically. There will be other players running around killing all of the goblins. And goblins don't seem to have like a force respawning mechanic where if you kill one, another one will spawn in that zone or something. So people will very quickly just clear out the zone of goblins, and until more start to spawn, you're just not going to find any. So you want to find an area that isn't super massive, that has a decent density of enemies, and that you won't really be seeing a lot of other players in, or at least as consistently. So with all that being said, you're going to want to be farming in Scovos areas. So pretty much any Scovos area is very good to go farm in because they are all much smaller, much more densely packed areas, except the lava area. The lava area is much bigger, but it also has the most weird pathing within it, and it's hard to navigate around. So I skip the lava area and I just go and run through all of the other Scovos areas. You can start in whichever zone you want, but what you primarily want to do is just start in one of the zones and make a whole route throughout the entirety of the zone, and then once you've pretty much cleared out that zone, go to the next zone, rinse and repeat, and just go through all of the zones, clear them all out of goblins, and you'll probably just be able to go back to where you started, and goblins will probably be respawned past that point, depending on how fast you are at clearing these zones. But before you actually go and start farming goblins, you want to make sure to go and pick up Subo as your mercenary, because he has the base passive effect that you can see all of the enemies on your mini map or your map, and you can see all of the herb and ore locations, but this actually helps for finding goblins specifically on your world map. So once you get to the zone you're going to be farming in and you have Subo, what you're going to do is you're going to zoom all the way into your main map. Now you can either stay zoomed in fully or zoom out once. Don't zoom out any additional times because you won't be able to see the goblins. So either the full zoom in or one past that. And what you're going to do, you're just going to get on your mount and you're going to speed around the map, and every couple seconds, depending on how fast you're moving, you're just going to go back and check your main world map of that zone. This will allow you to see goblins much further away because Subo will give you the additional range, and since you're moving around pretty quickly on your mount, you'll be able to just find the goblins much more quickly than you would normally be able to. because without using this method, you usually have to be somewhat close to the goblins to actually see them. With this, you'll be able to see them significantly further away, which just makes finding them so much more easy. Without having this mechanic with Subo and being able to see the goblins further away, these open world farms would not be very good. But using this method, you'll be able to pretty consistently find goblins throughout these zones. Unless a zone has been cleared out and has other players clearing them out, or you've cleared it out, you'll generally be finding a goblin every like minute or two. Now, I would also recommend you pick up the Goblin full node in the Nightmare Dungeons skill tree. This is the first blue node, and this just gives goblins a chance to drop a Nightmare Sigil with a Treasure Breach affix on it. Now, this is quite a low chance for this to happen, but it should work anywhere you kill goblins, and if you get one of these, it could potentially snowball into more Treasure Breach affixes, just because with the event active right now, every single goblin you find in a Treasure Breach affix dungeon will at least have 2 goblins there instead, and they can have up to 4 instead of just the single goblin you would normally find. So you could potentially be getting like dozens and dozens of goblins in one Treasure Breach affix run, and then that can get even more crazy if you also have the Shrine node, where when you kill anything, it'll respawn that enemy you killed at the end of the Shrine buff, specifically when in these Nightmare Dungeons. So if you get a Treasure Breach affix and you find a shrine within it, you could potentially be getting like a dozen plus goblin kills just from that shrine buff itself. So while this is a rare chance to get these Treasure Breach affixes on these sigils, it still is just adding a chance to do that, and doing these open world farms can still give you these. So it just makes the farm even better. But that's all I want to go over, so thanks for watching.